Hi everybody, hope you guys are doing good. This is Shan from HZad Education, and today I'm gonna go over a very popular request that I've seen in comments many times, which has been to give you guys some tips on reading and listening. So one video at a time. This video is gonna be on reading. I've made a video on this before, but and you guys can check it out. But I want to make another one based on the high demand, and also I'm gonna try to go in more detail this time. So if you watched the first video and you still haven't understood the aspects of the strategies, let me get into a lot more detail. Part 1, reading, CELPIP. It's the easiest part, but honestly it has a very small amount of time. You have about 5 or 6 multiple choice questions and then 3 or 4 response letter questions. So when you attempt the multiple choice questions, remember in CELPIP the answers could be anywhere. We first want to look at the question. So we look at question number 1. We look at the keywords in the question. With these keywords, we go in the passage and we find those keywords. It could be in the first paragraph, second, last, anywhere. But you go in the passage and find it, read that part of the passage. It could be 1 or 2 paragraphs. Just read that part. Now go back to the options A, B, C, D and match it. Okay? Now, when you're looking for those keywords, of course it doesn't have to be the same keywords. Like if it's people's name, Mark or Robert, it's going to be there. But if it's saying that how let's say the question says the industry in the past was, and now we don't have the word industry in the passage. We have the word manufacturing or the business or the processing department or so on. Well, that's industry. That's where the work is being done. So when you think of industry, think of different words. You want to think of, okay, let's say there's another question that says the leaders of this century were whatever. So don't rely on the word leaders. You might not find that in the passage. Think about leaders. Maybe they're going to say authority. Maybe they're going to say the board of directors, right? So it could be different words, but your image, the thing in your head should be that, okay, I'm looking for something in leadership terms. So when I go in the passage, I'm supposed to find something close to it. So that's what I mean when I say look at keywords. I mean look at keywords and imagine synonyms that they might use in the passage. So when you go up in the passage, you're able to find it easily. Now you've found it, read that place, come back, match it with the answers. Next question, do the same thing and so on. So with each question, you're looking at keywords and you're looking at certain paragraphs where you will find those things and you're reading those paragraphs. Eventually, you would have read the whole thing, okay? But we don't read everything first and then go in the questions because that's a waste of time. It's impossible for you to remember everything, so please don't do that. Read question by question and you will only read the relevant part that will help you answer that question. And trust me, this strategy is always the fastest, okay? Now you would have spent 7 minutes and you have about 10 minutes in the first part. The 3 minutes you have left are enough for the response letter questions, because in the response letter, now you have the person responding to the previous letter and you have to know the tone, right? So if the friend, in letter number 1, the friend was recommending their friend to move in with them and it's going to be cheaper, the basement is going to have more space, etc. The response letter will be based on those initial ideas. So the person now responding will probably say something like, okay, I love the basement, it's a great idea, I can't wait to move in with you. Or if they're being negative, it's going to be like, well, the basement might not be a good idea, it's far from buses, far from my work, your house is beautiful, but I'm not a fan of it. So see the tone of how the person is responding. If they're being negative, you will get all negative answers. If they're being positive, you'll get all positive answers. Okay, at the same time, you can mostly guess. You don't have to go up in the previous letter to answer the response letter questions. You can guess, because honestly, with the strategy that I'm giving you, where you read the passage section by section, you would have pretty much memorized it. You would have read everything in detail. So when it comes to the response letter, you can answer fast, but if you do forget things, you can look at some keywords in the response letter, go up in the previous letter and match them. Okay, so that can help. but you don't have much time. So examiners and CELPIP, whoever makes this reading, they rely on you to remember lots of the info and answer the response letter by guesswork. I would recommend answer the response letter by guesswork because you won't have much time. And if you do have extra time, that's bonus. Now you can go up and verify those things by the use of keywords. Okay, so that's part 1. Let's go to part 4. Again, I go to part 4 and part 1 simultaneously because part 4 is very similar to part 1. The only difference is the vocab is much harder. So what you can do for vocab practice is subscribe to our channel because I upload 15 words every week that you can learn, and that's of course a long-term process. You can practice more CELPIP readings to improve your vocab. You can go on the vocab word lists that I have recommended on my YouTube channel, but it's a long-term process. Don't worry about any of those things if your exam is in 2 weeks. But if it's a few months down the road, you have lots of time to learn vocab. Target 20-30 words a day, and you can improve that because you need it for reading. Okay, so the same stuff in part 4. Multiple choice questions, use the same strategy that I mentioned in part 1. Response to the initial article. Sorry, you want to follow the same strategies as well. Look at the initial article, and the response, the person responding would be basing his response on that article. Either he's going to be positive, he's going to be negative, and the responses will come accordingly. Now, the only difference in part 4 is, one is the vocab, the second one is the argument. So it's not a friendly conversation anymore, there are people arguing. One person says, I support this, the other person says, I'm against this. As long as you understand what they are fighting about, when you're reading, this is where you will understand it. When you are reading the questions and you are going in the paragraphs, matching that keyword and answering the multiple choice questions, at that time, you're also supposed to understand what each person is arguing about. One person is supporting the environment. Okay, so their attitude is going to be positive environment, invest in environment, and so on. The other person is opposite. So he might want to invest in public works and education and so on. It's very important to understand this. In CELPIP, the interpretation, the inference is very important because you will get questions throughout all 4 parts that will say, what did this person think? How did this person feel? Or what do you think he is thinking? Is he optimistic or pessimistic? So unless you understand what their opinion is, unless you put yourself in their shoes, you won't be able to answer those inference questions. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's go to part 3. Part 3 is very easy. It's very similar to IELTS. You look at all the questions first. So if it's questions 1 to 9, you read all the questions and look at the keywords. What this will help you do is it will help you remember the questions. Not 100%, but 60%. So you see in question number 1, it says the word economic, and you think of money, wealth, and business. Okay, number 2, it says the word political, and you think of governors, authority, and so on. And so on and so on. You read all 9 questions. Now you're going in paragraph A. You're reading paragraph A. You see the word governor of California. Okay, and you would remember there's something about politics, because when I read the word politics in the question, I thought about governors, ministers, and so on, so this matches. It's not the exact word, it's not the word politics that's in paragraph A, but it's something similar. So I can match it, and that eventually will turn out to be the right answer. You still have to read the whole paragraph, you have to read the whole sentence, match it, but what will happen is your mind will click and reading the keywords will tell you faster, hey, this is something that matches that something that I read. Okay, so reading the keywords is very helpful. It makes processes faster. When I was giving you this example, I was saying, think of economics. If they say the word economics, you think of money, business, and so on, because they might not use the word economics in the paragraph, right? They might paraphrase it. So when you look at the keywords, think and imagine the different synonyms they might use. Okay, this will take time, honestly, so you will be stressed when you follow my strategy. When you follow this, and you have 10 minutes, for example, in part 3, you will spend almost 1.5 minutes in reading the questions. Then you will spend 1 minute in reading paragraph A, right? You're down 2.5 minutes. So at the start, it might start to feel stressful. However, when you have answers for paragraph A, let's say you pick paragraph A matches question number 1 and 5. Now, for paragraph B, you have less options left. For C, you have less options left, and so on. So it'll get faster as you go. It starts slow with the strategy, but it gets very fast. However, this strategy is the most accurate strategy to follow in part 3. We teach the same thing in matching headings or matching paragraphs in IELTS. It works wonderfully. So if you can memorize those memorize or at least imagine the synonyms of the keywords in the questions, you can find it much faster in the paragraphs. So please follow that strategy. Finally, part 2. Part 2 is where you have the picture, which is quick, right? So you can go through that first. In all the other parts, I've been saying read the question first, but in part 2, read the picture first. It's not going to take much time. It's going to take you maximum 2 minutes. So now that you've read the picture, you have the complete idea of what it's offering. Now you go to the questions. Simple stuff. Look at the keywords in the question, go up in the picture and match it. This is probably the easiest part. Sometimes, well, a lot of times, because it is a picture, you can easily find the keywords. They paraphrase it. So make sure you're able to look for paraphrased words. For example, if it's saying in the picture, the word is travel time from the airport. In the questions, they might say chauffeuring from the airport takes 10 minutes. So chauffeuring is driving, so it's the same thing. It takes 10 minutes. So be careful with the keywords. It's heavily paraphrased in part 2, and that's probably the only difficulty you'll face. Then this part 2, the questions that you're answering are mostly in a letter format. After that, there are 3 or 4 questions based on the letter, and they say, okay, what did this person say to that person? What's their relationship? And so on. When these follow-up questions come up, mostly they're not even related to the picture. They're related to the letter we just read to answer the questions. So in this part, you have to refer to the letter more. People get confused. Should I refer to that letter or go to the picture? Look at the letter. The questions are based on the letter. And let me tell you a secret. When you're answering, let's say questions 1 to 5 in the letter, and you have looked at out of the 10 sentences of the letter, you used 7 sentences to answer the first 5 questions. The remaining sentences, the sentences that are left, like 3 sentences in this case, they will help you answer the follow-up questions. Okay, it's usually the sentences we haven't looked at that will help us answer the remaining questions at the end of part 2. Okay, so when you practice some CELPIP readings, you'll realize how true that is. It's like on your face. So make sure you go over that and follow that strategy. Few things to note. Once again, I have to heavily emphasize that CELPIP is based on inference, interpretation. It's not based on just simple reading. So make sure you understand what people are thinking, you know, how this person A feels, how person B feels, who's positive, who's negative, and so on. It's not like IELTS, where you look at keywords, go in the passage and find it quickly. I've been saying that, yeah, you go in the passage and find it, but read the passage, read that part. You have to read the whole part. In IELTS, you read a bunch of sentences and that's okay. But in CELPIP, when you find that keyword in the paragraph, read that whole paragraph. Because again, it's based on inference and interpretation. Another thing, in CELPIP, if you find out of the 4 multiple choice answers, you find the first one that is correct, do not ignore second, third, and fourth. Sometimes there are 2 correct answers, and this happens in listening as well. It's just you have to pick the better answer. So you have to look at all 4 options, eliminate the 3 options, and pick one. So if you eliminate everything else, you make sure that this is not mentioned in the passage, you will feel more confident in picking your answer. So do that too. Paraphrasing is heavy in CELPIP. So again, when I say look at the keywords in the question, don't just look at that keyword. As I said, like I talked about industry, how that could be paraphrased, politics or economics, right? All of those things could be paraphrased. Similarly, when you look at a keyword, one other example, I look at the keyword car, right? It says the car in whatever. And I'm trying to find this in the passage. I might not find it because they might say vehicle, they might say automobile, they might say means of transport. Okay, so look out for synonyms as well. Final thing, things are not always in sequence. Sometimes they are, and they keep a mixture to confuse us. So be careful about that. All right, and these things should help you out. If you have any questions, feel free to comment or email. My email is always in the description. If you guys have more content requests, let me know. I know the next biggest thing that is requested is listening, so I will upload a video on that hopefully next week. Tomorrow, I'll upload a video on vocab, and I hope you guys find this beneficial. For more tips and tricks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on your notifications, and you'll get a lot of valuable content every week from HZad Education and myself, Sean. Thank you and take care.